No fixed dogmas. In the identical experience as Christianity or Islam, Judaism can't be credited with the possession of articles of religion. Many attempts have indeed been made at systematizing and decreasing to a hard and fast phrasing and sequence the contents of the Jewish faith. But those have always lacked the only crucial detail, authoritative sanction at the part of a perfect ecclesiastical body. And for this reason they have now not been recognized as final or appeared as of universally binding force. Though to a sure quantity incorporated in the liturgy and utilized for purposes of training, these formulations of the cardinal tenets of Judaism carried no more weight than that imparted to them by the reputation and scholarship in their respective authors. None of them had an individual analogous to that given inside the Church to its three super-formulas, the so-called Apostles' Creed, the Nicene or Constantinopolitan, and the Athanasian, or even to the Kalimat as-Shahadat of the Mohammedans. The recital of this Kalimat is the primary of the 5 pillars of practical religion in Islam, and one converted to Islam ought to repeat it verbatim, in order that among the situations required of each believer almost about confession is the responsibility to copy it aloud as a minimum as soon as in a lifetime. None of the many summaries from the pens of Jewish philosophers and rabbis has been invested with similar importance and prominence. The reasons for this relative absence of reputable and compulsory creeds are easily ascertained. No one for creeds in Judaism. The statement of Leibniz, in his preface to the Essays de Theodicy, that the international locations which crammed the earth earlier than the status quo of Christianity had ceremonies of devotion, sacrifices, libations, and a priesthood, however that they had no articles of religion and no dogmatic theology, applies with mild modification to the Jews. At first race, or possibly it is more correct to mention nationality and faith, were coextensive. Delivery, no longer career, admitted to the religio countrywide fellowship. So long as inner dissension or external assault did now not necessitate for purposes of defense the formulation of the unusual and differentiating doctrines, the idea of paragraphing and solving the contents of the religious focus could not insinuate itself into the mind of even the maximum faithful. Missionary or proselytizing religions are pushed to the specific statement of their teachings. The admission of the neophyte hinges upon the career and the reputation of his part of the notion, and that right here can be no uncertainty about what's critical and what non-essential. It's miles incumbent at the proper authorities to determine and promulgate the cardinal tenets in a form as a way to facilitate repetition and memorizing. And the same necessity arises in the church or non-secular fellowship is torn through internal heresies. Beneath the need of combating heresies of diverse tiers of perilousness and of cussed insistence, the Church and Islam have been forced to define and formally restrict their respective theological principles. Both of these provocations to creed building had been much less intense in Judaism. The proselytizing zeal, although at some point of sure intervals extra energetic than at others, become, on the entire, neutralized, and part by means of inherent disinclination and element ly via pressure of occasions. Righteousness, in accordance to Jewish notion, become no longer conditioned of the recognition of the Jewish faith. And the righteous, the various countries that carried into practice the 7 fundamental laws of the covenant with Noah and his descendants had been declared to be individuals within the felicity of the hereafter. This interpretation of the status of non-Jews precluded the development of a missionary mindset. Moreover, the rules for the reception of proselytes, as advanced in path of time, show the eminently realistic, that is, the non-creedal man or woman of Judaism. Compliance with positive rites, baptism, circumcision, and sacrifice is the check of the would-be convert's faith. He is instructed within the information of the prison instruction that manifests the Jew's religiosity, even as the career of religion demanded is restricted to the acknowledgement of the solidarity of God and the rejection of idolatry. Yorei Dua, Germ, 268, 2. Judah Halevi, Kuzari, I. 115, puts the whole matter very strikingly while he says, "We aren't placing on an equality with us a person getting into our religion through confession alone, Arabic original, Bible Ahmadi equals by word. We require deeds, which include in that term self-restraint, purity, examine of the regulation, circumcision, and the performance of different obligations demanded by way of the Torah. For the coaching of the convert, consequently, no different approach of coaching become employed than for the schooling of one born a Jew. The purpose of teaching become to carry expertise of the law, obedience to which manifested the acceptance of the underlying religious principles, namely, the lifestyles of God and the holiness of Israel because the people of his covenant. The debate whether or not Judaism needs notion and dogma or inculcates obedience to practical laws alone, has enlisted many able students. Moses Mendelssohn, in his Jerusalem, defended the non-dogmatic nature of Judaism, whilst Lowe, amongst others, see his Gesammelte Schriften, I. 3152, 433 et seq. 1871, took the alternative aspect. Lowe made it clear that the Mendelssohnian idea have been carried beyond its legitimate bounds. The which means of the phrase for faithful and notion in Hebrew, emunah, had certainly been strained to a ways to substantiate the Mendelssohnian thesis. Underlying the preparation of the regulation become veritably the recognition of sure fundamental and decisive religious ideas culminating within the perception in God and revelation, and likewise in the doctrine of retributive divine justice. Evolution of Judaism. The current crucial view of the development of the Pentateuch inside the evolution of Israel's monotheism confirms this idea. The talk of the prophets hinges on the adoption with the aid of the human beings of Israel of the religion of YHWH that excluded from the outset idolatry, or really the popularity of any other deity than YHWH as the legitimate Lord of Israel, that, in its modern evolution, related YHWH the ideas of holiness, justice, and righteousness, and that which culminated within the coaching of God's spirituality and universality. The historical books of the Bible, as recast in accordance with those latter spiritual ideas, evince the force of a robust and genuinely apprehended conviction regarding the providential reason in the destinies of Earth's population, and extra mainly in the steering of Israel. Discussions and dogmatism disfavored. The Psalms and understanding books take place the predominance of particular religious ideals. To say that Judaism is a barren legalistic convention, as Mendelssohn avers, is an unmistakable exaggeration. The modicum of truth in his principle is that at some point of biblical Judaism, as in truth in the course of all later stages of Jewish non-secular wondering and instruction, this doctrinal detail remains always in solution. It isn't crystallized into constant phrasing or rigid dogma. And, moreover, the ethical and practical implications of the religion are by no means obscured. That is evidenced with the aid of the biblical passages that, within the opinion of many, partake of the nature of articles of faith, or are of tremendous cost as displaying what, inside the opinion of their respective authors, constitutes the essence of faith. Amongst those the most noteworthy are Deuteronomy 6, 4, ISA, XLV, 5:7, Micah 6, 8, PlayStation, 15, ISA, I, 16, 17, 33, 15. Whatever controversies may have agitated Israel throughout the centuries of the prophets and the sooner post-exilic period, they had been not of a kind to result in the defining of articles of faith counteract the impacts of heretical coaching. Dogmatic influences take place themselves most effective after the Maccabean battle for independence. However, even those variations have been no longer far achieving sufficient to triumph over the inherent aversion to dogmatic fixation of concepts, for, with the Jews, popularity of concepts was not so much a remember of theoretical assent as of practical conduct. Although Josephus could have the divisions among the Pharisees and the Sadducees hinge at the formal reputation or rejection of sure points of doctrine along with providence, resurrection of the frame, which for the Pharisees become identical with future retribution. It's far the consensus of opinion amongst present-day pupils that the variations among those events were rooted in their respective political programs and implied in their respectively national and anti-countrywide attitudes, as opposed to in their philosophical or non-secular dogmas. If the words of Sirach 3:2023 are to be taken as a criterion, the intensely pious of his days did no longer incline to speculations of what became past their powers to realize. They have been content material to carry out their spiritual obligations in simplicity of religion. The Mishnah, Haggai 11:1, endorsed this view of Sirach, and in a few diploma, discountenanced theosophy and dogmatism. A number of the recorded discussions in the colleges of the rabbis, dogmatic problems commanded most effective a very inferior degree of interest. Air. 13b. Controversy concerning the fee of human existence, Haggai 12a, concerning the order of creation. Nevertheless, within the earliest Mishnah is located the quotation of Abtalion against heresy and unbelief, about I 11:12, and many a Baraita betrays the prevalence of spiritual differences, Br. 12b, Abzara 17a. Those controversies have left their impress upon the prayer book and the liturgy. This is proven by the prominence given to the Shema, to the messianic predictions inside the Shemini Esra, the 18 benedictions, which emphasize the perception within the resurrection, and, subsequently, to the prominence given to the Decalogue, although the latter became again not noted so that it will counteract the notion that it alone have been discovered. Tamid v. 1, Ur. Br. 6b, Babbr. 12a. Those expressions of belief are held to have originated within the choice to give specific utterance and impressiveness to the corresponding doctrines that had been either rejected or attenuated with the aid of some of the heretical faculties. However, at the same time as the essayed portions of the daily liturgy are expressive of the doctrinal contents of the regnant party in the synagogue, they had been not forged into the shape of catalogued articles of faith. The primary to make the try to formulate them become Philo of Alexandria. The influence of Greek concept prompted some of the Jews of Egypt the reflective temper. Dialogue became surely active on the unsettled factors of speculative belief, and such discussion led, because it almost usually does, to a stricter definition of the doctrines. In his paintings De Mundi Apofficio, LXI, Philo enumerates 5 articles as embracing the leader tenets of Mosaism. 1. God is in regulations. 2. God is one. 3. The world turned into created. 4. Creation is one. 5. God's windfall guidelines creation. However, few of the Tanaim and Amoraim this situation of Philo discovered no followers, though a lot of their wide variety have been drawn into controversies with each Jews and non-Jews, and needed to give a boost to their faith towards the attacks of contemporaneous philosophy in addition to towards growing Christianity. Simplest in a popular manner the Mishnah San. 11. One excludes from the sector to come back the Epicureans and those who deny belief in resurrection or within the divine beginning of the Torah. Arf Akiba would also regard as heretical the readers of Sepharim Hetzanim certain extraneous writings, Apocrypha or Gospels, and such humans that could heal through whispered formulas of magic. Abbasal designated as below suspicion of infidelity people who pronounce the ineffable name of the deity. Through implication, the opposite doctrine and mindset may thus be appeared as having been proclaimed as orthodox. Alternatively, Akiba himself broadcasts that the command to love one's neighbor the essential the principle of the law, while Ben Asa assigns this distinction to the biblical verse. This is the e-book of the generations of Guy, Gen V. I. General Arc 24. The definition of Hillel the Elder in his interview with a would-be convert, Shab 31a, embodies within the Golden Rule the one fundamental article of faith. a teacher of the 3rd Christian century, R. Simlai, strains the improvement of Jewish non-secular standards from Moses with his 613 instructions of prohibition and injunction, through David, who, in step with this rabbi, enumerates 11, through Isaiah, with 6, Micah, with 3, to Habakkuk, who sincerely however impressively sums up all non-secular religion inside the single word, "The pious lives in his faith," Mac. Toward stop. Because the halakha enjoins that one have to choose dying to an act of idolatry, incest, unchastity, or homicide, the inference is apparent that the corresponding fantastic concepts had been held to be fundamental articles of Judaism. The Decalogue as a summary. From Philo right down to late medieval and even current writers, the Decalogue has been held to be in some manner a précis of each the articles of the genuine faith and the duties derived from that faith. In keeping with the Alexandrian truth seeker, the order of the 10 words isn't unintended. They divide without difficulty into 2 businesses, the first 5 summarizing Guy's family members to the deity, the other 5 specifying man's obligations to his fellows. Ibn Ezra truly adopts this view. He interprets the contents of the Decalogue, not simply in their felony ritual bearing, however, as expressive of ethico-non secular concepts. But this view can be traced to other traditions. In Europe, Br. 6b, the Shema is declared to be only an epitome of the Decalogue. That in the poetry of the synagogal ritual this idea regularly dominates is widely known. No much less a philosopher than Saadia Jain composed a liturgical production of this individual, C. Azarat, and Arth Eliezer ben Nathan of Mayence enriched the Pré-Air book with a piyut in which the 613 instructions are rubricated inside the order of and in connection with the Decalogue. The principle that the Decalogue became the muse of Judaism, its article of religion, changed into advocated Isaac Abravanel, see his observation on XXX. 1. And in current years via Isaac M. Clever of Cincinnati in his Catechism and different writings. The only confession of religion, but which, although now not so denominated, has located widespread popularity, paperwork a part of the daily liturgy, contained in all Jewish prayer books. L in its authentic form it steady fairly as follows. Real and hooked up is that this word for us all the time. Proper it is that thou art our God, as thou wast the God of our fathers, our King is, thou wast, the King of our fathers, our Redeemer and the Redeemer of our fathers, our Creator and the Rock of our salvation, our Deliverer and Savior from eternity is thy name, and there may be no God except thee. This declaration dates possibly from the days of the Hasmoneans, C. Landsheth, and Hegian Leb. Saadias, Judah Halevi's, and Bayas Creed. Inside the stricter experience of the time period, Specs and related series, and rational analysis of articles of religion did no longer locate Jews with the teachers and the faithful earlier than the Arabic duration. The polemics with the Karaites on the only hand, and, on the other, the need of protecting their religion in opposition to the attacks of the philosophies modern among both Mohammedans and Jews, precipitated the leading thinkers to outline and formulate their ideals. Saadia's Emunat Widiyat is in fact one long X-roll of the main tenets of the devoted. The plan of the e-book discloses a systematization of the one-of-a-kind non-secular doctrines that, inside the estimation of the author, represent the sum total of his religion. There, within the order and the treatment by him, the following. 1. The arena is created. 2. God is one and incorporeal. 3. Belief in revelation, which includes the divine foundation of culture. 4. Man is referred to as to righteousness and endowed with all essential features of mind and soul to avoid sin. 5. Belief in reward and punishment. 6. The soul is created pure, after loss of life it leaves the frame. 7. Belief in resurrection. 8. Messianic expectation, retribution, and very last judgment. Judah Halevi endeavored, and his Kuzari, to determine the fundamentals of Judaism on every other foundation. He rejects all enchantment to speculative cause, repudiating the method of the Motokalaman. The miracles and traditions are, of their natural man or woman, both the source and the proof of the proper religion. With them Judaism stands and falls. The e-book of Baya ibn Pakuda, Hobat Halebabat, whilst exceptional, as its far, for endeavoring to give religion its actual pudding as a religious pressure, contributed not anything of notice to the exposition of the fundamental articles. It is going without saying that the unity of God, his government of the sector, the possibilities of main a divine life which had been never forfeited by way of Guy are expounded as necessities of Judaism. Ibn Dud and Hananel bin Hushiel. More thrilling on this point is the work of our Abraham ibn Dud, 1120, entitled Emnarama, the High Faithful. Within the second department of his treatise he discourses at the standards of faith and the regulation. Those standards are: the life of God, his harmony, his spirituality, his other attributes, his power as manifested in his works, his providence. Much less widely known is the scheme of an African rabbi, Hananel bin Hushiel, about a century in advance, and step with whom Judaism's fundamental articles range for: perception in God, belief in prophecy, belief in a future country, notion in the appearance of the Messiah. The 13 Articles of Maimonides. The most broadly spread and popular of all creeds is that of Maimonides, embracing the 13 Articles. Why he chose this precise wide variety has been a subject of a good deal discussion. A few have visible inside the number a connection with the 13 attributes of God. Possibly no meaning attaches to the selection of the variety. His articles are: 1. The life of God. 2. His harmony. 3. His spirituality. 4. His eternity. 5. God on my own, the object of worship. 6. Revelation through his prophets. 7. The preeminence of Moses, some of the prophets. 8. God's regulation given on Mount Sinai. 9. The immutability of the Torah as God's law. 10. God's foreknowledge of Guy's movements. 11. Retribution. 12. The coming of the Messiah. 13. Resurrection. This creed Maimonides wrote while nonetheless a completely younger man, it paperwork part of his Mishnah commentary, but he in no way cited it in his later works. C.S./Adler, Tenets of Religion and Their Authority Within the Talmud, in his Kobez al-Yad, page 92, in which Yad HaHazaka, Isherbaya, 14:2, is called evidence that Maimonides in his superior age seemed as essential of the religion handiest the unity of God and the prohibition of idolatry. It did now not meet frequent recognition, but, as its phraseology is succinct, it has surpassed into the prayer book, and is consequently acquainted to nearly all Jews of the Orthodox school. The successors of Maimonides, from the 13th to the 15th century Ammonides, Abamari ben Moses, Simon ben Zima, Duran, Albo, Isaac Arama, and Joseph Jabez reduced his 13 articles to 3. Perception in God, in Advent or Revelation, and in Providence or Retribution. Others, like Crescas and David ben Samuel Estella, stated 7 essential articles, laying strain on unfastened will. Alternatively, David ben Yamtab ibn Bilia, in his Yesadat ha-Maskil, Fundamentals of the Thinking Guy, adds to the 13 of Maimonides 13 of his own various, which are present day of Albo, see Ikarim, 3. Additionally selected for his fundamentals, at the same time as Jediah Penini, in the closing chapter of his Behinet Hadat, enumerated no less than 35 cardinal concepts, see Lowe, Judish Dogman, in his Gesamelt Werke, I. 156 ET SEQ, and Schechter, Dogmas of Judaism, in Studies of Judaism, pages 147-181. In the 14th century, Asher ben Jehiel of Toledo raised his voice against the Maimonidean Articles of Faith, maintaining them to be best brief, and counseled that any other be added to recognize that the exile is a punishment for the sins of Israel. Isaac Abravanel, his Rosh Hashanah, took the same mindset towards Maimonides' creed. At the same time as protecting Maimonides against Hasdai and Albo, he refused to simply accept dogmatic articles for Judaism, conserving, with all of the Kabbalists, that the 613 commandments of Tehi regulation are all tantamount to articles of faith. In liturgical poetry, the articles of faith, as evolved by philosophical speculation, met with metrical presentation. The maximum stated of such metrical and rhymed embellishments are the Adon Olam, with the aid of an anonymous creator, now used as an advent to the morning offerings, by the Sephardim as the realization of the Musaf or additional provider, and of relatively recent date, and the other referred to as the Yigdal, consistent with Lozado, by using our Daniel B. Judah Dayan. Modern-day catechisms. The current catechisms abound in formulated articles of religion. Those are typically meant to be recited through the candidates for affirmation, or to be used for the reception of proselytes. See Dr. Einhorn's Olat Tamid. The Central Conference of the USAN Rabbis, in devising a formulation for the admission of proselytes, elaborated a hard and fast of articles of faith. These contemporary schemes have now not met with fashionable, prefer their authors being in almost all cases the simplest ones which have had recourse to them in instruction. The factors of agreement in these latest productions consist in the affirmation of the cohesion of God, the election of Israel as the priest people, the messianic future of all humanity, the declaration of concepts with the aid of the Pittsburgh Conference, 1885, is to be classed, perhaps, with the many attempts to fix in a succinct enumeration the main principles of the present-day Jewish spiritual recognition. The Karaites are not at the back of the rabbinates within the elaboration of articles of faith. The oldest times of the life of such articles among them are determined inside the famous phrase through Judah ben Elijah Hadassi, Eshkol HaKofer. Inside the order they're given, those are the articles of the Karaite. 1. God is the author of all created beings. 2. He is premundane and has no peer or associate. 3. The whole universe is created. 4. God known as Moses and the alternative prophets of the biblical canon. 5. The law of Moses on my own is authentic. 6. To know the language of the Bible is a non-secular duty. 7. The temple at Jerusalem is the palace of the sector's ruler. 8. Perception and resurrection contemporaneous with the arrival of the Messiah. 9. Very last judgment. 10. Retribution. The range 10 right here isn't always unintentional. It's miles keeping with the scheme of the Decalogue. Judah Hadassi acknowledges that he had predecessors in this line, and mentions some of the works on which he bases his enumeration. The most succinct cataloging of the Karaite religion in articles is that via Elijah Bashiatzi, died about 1490. His articles vary but little from those by using Hadassi, however they may be placed with more philosophical precision. See Jost, Geschichte des Judentums, 2. 331.